Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Conflict Specialist Show. I'm Dave Hilton, your host. Now, my guest today is Gregg Fenten. Gregg is a mediator, facilitator, trainer, and consultant. He's also the producer and host of the Mediation Station. It's a radio show on CHHA 1610 AM in Toronto, Canada, and it airs every Sunday night from 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern. Gregg, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So my first question for you is, do you have one or two areas that you consider to be your specialization?
I focus a lot on what's called community mediation and relationships. So I see each situation or experiences from a perspective of relationships. And I focus a lot in the community. So it's that intention and purpose that my practice is focused on. Though I do engage in other formal settings like what would be called a small claims court and also family court.
So can you tell us more about your educational and professional background prior to becoming a mediator?
Sure. I was working for many years in the retail sector selling shoes in a specialty store. When I was younger, I was thinking about being a lawyer. And when I had to make a decision on either going to school or working, I needed to get a job. So I abandoned at that point the situation about being a lawyer. I just didn't feel comfortable with an adversarial approach. Wasn't part of my mindset. So I stayed in retail because I had to make a living and support some family members. And then I reached a saturation point years later. And I said, hey, I need to revisit the idea of changing careers. I revisited the idea, too, of seeing about being a lawyer. Again, I knew I had changed, though fundamentally I hadn't changed in terms of my approach with the interaction of individuals and their issues and concerns with each other. So, I thought about being a lawyer again. No, okay, that wasn't going to work. So I found out about a program at a university here in Toronto, which the university is called York University, and the certificate program in dispute resolution. And I thought of it as a good step, as a transition to something else, though at that time I wasn't sure exactly what that would be. And then,
go ahead.
Question?
No, go ahead.
So then, so I took that as a part-time thing, continuing to work retail full-time, and then I eventually had a conversation with one of the instructors on an elective that was called grievance arbitration. And I said, hey, I'm looking to really make a transition into, conflict resolution area. And she basically said to me, you need to build your credibility. So if you go into the field, who's gonna hire you? What do you have that somebody out there is going to want in order to distinguish you from the next professional, i.e. So this ties in directly with your earlier question, who was influential for me? And this is the person that I would identify. It was the instructor for that course who is a practicing somewhat lawyer, though more an arbitrator. And she told me to go to school. That's where I should start, because I had never actually graduated from university. I had taken what's called college. College is a bit different. I'm not sure in the States how you would define it, though it's usually a 2-year diploma program, or maybe possibly 3. University here was 4 or 5 years. So I enrolled part-time at the University of Toronto in employment relations as an undergrad, part-time student. I did that. I worked at that over 9 years. And as part of that process, first I did a certificate in human resource management. And then I did the undergrad and in employment relations and tied it in with another undergrad. So I had 2 undergrads at the same time. The second one was peace and conflict studies. So when I eventually graduated in 2009, I had a few pieces of paper that helped me with my credentials, though I had mentioned I was working at the shoe store. So as part of the transition too, in 1998, I took an internship at a community-based agency in Toronto. And I did the internship for the year, and then I did volunteering for 4 years. And then eventually I was approached to be hired by the agency. And that's when I had to make the critical decision on shifting out from the retail sector and into something that was going to eventually become my passion. And that's what I did in 2002. I shifted full-time out from the retail and went into the community-based approach, and that's where I've remained. And I stayed with the agency for years, and then in 2010, I went out as an independent, and I became a, practicing individual, doing community-based work, mediations, facilitations, workshops, training. The radio program had actually started in February 2005, and it was started as once a month. It's a volunteer gig too. It's a passion. It's connected to my whole purpose and intention of trying to help educate and inform individuals about change. So it's focused on a social change model. And then as well, just finding different opportunities and reaching out and connecting with individuals. So that's part of my road, my journey, which is a totally ever-evolving thing. I'm not stuck. I'm into change. I'm comfortable with that.
Well, radio is definitely a powerful medium to be able to get the word out, to educate people. I know that from 20 years of experience doing that. So what I'd like to know is, can you tell us the story of your first experience doing a mediation? I mean, as far as, were you scared to death? I mean, it was completely different than what you were used to, other than the fact you were used to dealing with people, but it's on an entirely different level. So kind of walk us through that story, what it was like for your first mediation.
When I took the internship at the community-based agency, so they practice what's called a co-mediation model, two mediators, and my first mediator, or my first case, involved the same mediator on both cases. And in fact, my experiences with those were not necessarily on an initial point as being positive, though I took that situation and reframed it. What I mean is that the outcomes for the parties that I felt, they weren't very productive and effective. And I felt, with a co-mediation model, you work with an experienced mediator who somewhat mentors you along. So my first case, those two cases were really difficult for me to remain passive. I didn't feel I had the authority or the right to open up my mouth too much to interject because of the, quote, great experience of the lead mediator. I thought that what he was doing was the expected. I looked at the big picture, and I was trying to keep constantly connected with the parties and seeing how they weren't really responding in what I think the intention was of the mediator. And then later on, I reflected on it, and I thought, hey, those situations were not really productive in that sense, though they're great. They were the best learnings for me. I took from those the ones that push you out of your safe space, your box, your norm, and really challenge and help you question yourself as to whatever it is, what's going on, or what actually isn't going on too. Those are the ones that I really felt most ideally helped me grow. So when I informed the agency, for future cases, I just said, hey, put me on all the most challenging cases, because those are the ones that are going to push me out of my box and help me develop and build my skill sets. So I became very involved, taking on a lot of cases, and the ones that were most challenging. And, as a result, you build a reputation. You build a sense that of confidence from others that, hey, if we have that kind of situation, that's the go-to person. So that's one of the reasons why the agency approached me after a few years when they had a need to hire somebody. They tapped into their volunteer pool, and it was an easier segue into the system that they already had established. So, if there's anything to share with people who are listening and watching, is that be open to change and be open to situations that quote, provide you with a lot of your greatest fears. Because if you can work through those, the potential positivity that comes from it is so much more rewarding than when we look at it as a negative and a barrier.
Excellent. Well, can you tell us more about your work with the Toronto Resource Center for Peaceful Conflict Resolution?
Well, they're an agency. They're really an individual who approached me when I was working for the agency up in North Toronto as managing the community program. Somebody contacted me. She's a retired person, Eva, and she had a project. She just wanted to be something that was going on and be a focus for information and resources out in the community. And part of my purpose with the program that I did was to try to help support individuals or groups to, empower themselves with opportunities for change and reaching their goals. So we developed a relationship. She established this website. It's morphed a bit over time. It's still a one-person operation per se. So what I do in my relationship, every radio program, every show, I promote her website, so hoping to help build traffic to her site. And I record by audio Mediation Station, and I send basically podcasts over, and she uploads it there. And then people can tap in and listen to past shows on Mediation Station. So there's a whole, she's dedicated. I really appreciate her efforts. I'm on the home page there. You can tap into past shows if you missed. It's an opportunity for relationship building, which is critical to what, my own mindset is.
Well, when I was doing some research for our conversation today, I saw there on that website that you offer a weekly free mediation clinic. You do that through the San Lorenzo Latin American Community Center. So what inspired you to start a free clinic?
It's the whole intention of my purpose is here to help contribute to some kind of change. I'm an agent of change to influence. So when I left the agency in 2010, about 6 months later, I had a conversation with one of the key administrators of the San Lorenzo, which is focused on the Spanish-speaking community in Greater Toronto. And that's through which the Mediation Station is a product. So there's San Lorenzo Community Center, and the product is the Voces Latinas, CHHA radio, which is licensed under the Canadian government institution, the Canadian Radio and Television Commission. So it's gone through a whole formal process to be made legitimate. And so the radio had started up. I had established a relationship with them. They knew what my practice had been, working with people and individuals in struggles. So I was just asked, hey, would I offer some kind of service? So I provide on each Monday from 5 to 7 p.m. It's a free and confidential service for anybody in the community to come in and work either one-on-one, like in a coaching situation, to help them, self-identify what the issues are, concerns that they have in a relationship, and then strategize with them about creating some ways or techniques on creating change. Or sometimes it involves bringing two or more people together in a relationship, like in a mediation, to work and resolve things like that. So that's been going on since July of 2010. And that's a free service. There's like 2 promos, one in Spanish, one in English, that goes through rotation on the radio to help promote it as well. And then I have these outreach cards that I distribute to try to promote it. So it's a little opportunity for me to help contribute. That's part of my passion. It's, finding different ways to help engage community in the ways that are meaningful for them to connect with.
So do you speak Spanish?
I speak a little bit.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I have a little bit, but it's not necessary for me to do that. So I have some basic understanding, though individuals know that for the most part, if they have struggles with that, and I'll ask them, I have access to a volunteer who can help translate Spanish, English, English, Spanish as part of the service delivery of that too.
So when you're doing your free clinic, would you say you do more coaching, more conflict coaching than actual mediation, or is it just sort of a mixture of that?
It's a mixture, but if there was to be like a percentage, I would say it would sway more on the coaching part, the more individual part, to help people with, what's going on for you, why did you come, what resonated with finding out, how will you refer to me, and then working with them to see, you're at here, and you ultimately want to get to another point. So my service is to assist people through the journey of change, getting from here where you're at and you're not necessarily happy with, and getting to a better point.
So can you tell us more about the Toronto Family Courts Family Law Centers and your responsibilities as an information and referral coordinator?
Yeah. In the province of Ontario, which is, similar to the state of Texas, we have a family court system. So divorce is a federal statute area. It's under the Divorce Act. So individuals can't self-divorce. They have to go to a court by a judge and be granted. Any other family law issues like child support, spousal support, property division, access, these are all dealt with on a provincial level for the most part. There's laws that way. So in Ontario, there's laws. So there's a family court system of about 41 courts throughout the province. And up until July of 2010, there were only at about 17 of the 41 courts what's called information mediation services, options other than dealing with directly the court as trial. So the government rolled out with the Ministry of Attorney General to all the courts in July 2010 that this was necessary. They had put out a call for proposals, so private groups were asked to form and make bids and presentations to get awarded the contract for the courts. So I got connected and started with a particular group in August of 2011 as what's called an information referral coordinator, which is a frontline individual who triages, connects, finds out what the experience of the situation is for the individuals, and has them sort of say, okay, this is something you're happy with, or do you need some assistance, and where do you need assistance? So my role is to help them navigate in the family court system, which can be very intimidating for the average individual because the process has so many rules. It has a lot of timelines, and it's costly and not the most effective for getting your own outcomes. So access to justice is part of the mantra here, that people need assistance in getting it because the courts are backlogged, whether it's in criminal, small claims, or civil, or in family. So this is an intention by the government to be a little more client-centric, to be more, when individuals come into the system, to help them navigate within, and also to connect them with resources or options out in the community that can help them. So trying to provide a little more holistic approach to the experience, because people are not only experiencing one issue, the family issue or the family law issue, they have other multiple situations that are going on simultaneously, and they need supports through that. So it's, hearing people's stories and trying to find where's the best approach to work them forward with that. So I'm 3 days a week at one of the family courts. It's called 311 Jarvis Street. It's in downtown Toronto. It's actually a multi-service court. There's a family court there every day. There's a youth criminal justice court there. There's also an Aboriginal court 2 times a month. There's also a youth mental health court twice a month, and there's also an integrated domestic violence court, which is a pilot project taking criminal charges, domestic assault, and connecting them with family law matters so that the same judge can actually hear the same situation and make decisions. So it's trying to be more efficient that way. So that's my role in terms of the family court part.
So do you work with attorney? And I'm just going, from my bias here in the States, most people, when they decide they're going to get a divorce, what they do is they go hire their attorney, and then their attorney helps them through the process. So is it the same there in Canada? When they go through the family court system, are you working as a coordinator with the attorneys, or are you working with the actual parties?
We're more focused on the parties, the clients.
Yeah.
See, here generally, law, the family stuff, the hourly rate is between $350 to $750 an hour for a lawyer.
Yeah, yeah.
That really puts people at a disadvantage.
Mm.
So there's been a research study that happened just earlier this year, and it just affirmed that a majority of the clients who enter into the system, the family court system, up to 70% are self-represented. They either start with a lawyer and then find they can't continue because they can't afford it,
Mm-hmm.
or they just don't actually hire a lawyer because they perceive they can't. So they're individuals that fall, there's what's called Legal Aid Ontario,
Mm-hmm.
which is a government-funded stream to help support individuals who of lower income, and so really low. And then, there's a gap between people from that. There's lots of people can't. So, it's working with the lawyers, it's working with the individuals, it's working with other service agencies to help support people who are going through the system. And it's also to work with other stakeholders at the court itself or out in the community.
Fascinating. Well, something else in your background that I was fascinated and I found was this new project you're working on, the Turning Things Around project. And I just read a very brief description of it, but I thought it was just fascinating, this project you're doing. Can you tell us more about it?
Yeah, that's something that's just recent. It's just up and going. It's part of my consulting, private, other work related to community. So an agency that I have a long history with, and I've been working, whether I was with my other agency, and then as a private individual doing some training. So I was approached to be involved. They got some funding from the City of Toronto. Mm-hmm. It's focused on safety, and it's focused on youth in three primary communities. So the Somali, the Caribbean, and the South Asian communities, ages between 15 and 24. Mm-hmm. So it's trying to engage the youth in conflict resolution trainings, though using a little more innovative approach to integrate social media and technology as part of that dynamic. So I'm at the opening part of it, trying to recruit and doing outreach. It's very limited. I only have 10 hours a month to try to do this. So, yesterday was at a meeting, even though it's Sunday, you have to go when you got to go and do, the connections and relationship building. So this person has contacts, especially in the Somali community. So I want to, take advantage of as many opportunities. So I got to try to, recruit individual youths who are motivated to be involved in this opportunity to acquire skill sets, because there has been, over the last number of years, a lot of youth violence, killings that have resulted from the particular groups. And it's an intention and purpose to try to get some positive change. Of course, that's not going to happen magically, and it's not going to happen by me just coming in, parachuted in. So my approach is not to say, here, this is what you got to do. It's to engage the youth in conversations and discussions and find out, what is happening for you? What would you like to see ideally? And then it's up for me to work with them to create those changes that will resonate or be more meaningful for them. So utilizing conflict resolution skill sets and related topic areas with social media, because kids are using more and more social media streams to communicate, and less of the interpersonal part where they're face-to-face. So there's like a gap of the space, and we need to find a better way for them to communicate and reframe that messaging. So that's part of the intention too, and maybe utilizing YouTube, hopefully Facebook, Twitter, and then finding out what ultimately can happen. So this is going to run till the end of or mid part of April 2014. It's not a long time, but the organization is hoping to go for second-year funding and identify some key youth who want to be trained as mentors to then become more, it's about building community capacity and actually the community itself being its strength, and there's resources there for individuals to help others within the community.
So have you recruited all of the people you need, or
No.
are you still in that process?
No, I'm in the process. I haven't actually gotten anybody yet.
Ah.
So that's why I'm tapping in to try to find different streams and spaces to promote, bring awareness of the project.
Mm-hmm.
So when I do my program on the radio, I just do a shout out there, a PSA, a public service announcement.
Mm-hmm.
I have some other websites that I've connected with. There's individuals I'm sending up later today. I have to send some emails with an e-version of the flyer that was created, and go from there. People can visit the LinkedIn. There's a Facebook group page for Mediation Station. I have a reference there. There's a Facebook page for Mediation Station.
Mm-hmm.
I have a reference there. So just trying to be creative and opportunistic in getting the message out. So those kinds of projects are really important because they're about grassroots and individuals on a level that people can connect with, rather than being in a higher, when we go to the court, we're already in a more sophisticated stream and things are already clearly established, and it's really hard to get change there. So that's also why on the radio I've provided for some judges to come on. I had a judge on early September. I'm having another judge next month, on November 24th. I have another judge coming on later on in January, and then the justice of the peace as well. So I'm trying to find, like you, ways to better inform and educate the community and the public.
So let's talk more about the history and mission of your radio show, Mediation Station, because we've mentioned it 5 or 6 times now during our conversation. So, what inspired? It takes a special kind of person to want to get on the radio and have a big microphone sitting there next to you and you talking to people, where usually, you might be able to see the guests who are there, but other than that, you don't know who's listening or why they're listening, and like in this case, people who are watching this show. So, what inspired you to want to do that?
In 2004, November, the radio station itself, Voces Latinas, went on the air.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's going to come up to celebrate its, 9th year?
Yeah.
And it was a product of some outreach that was being done through a project that was through my program, Community Transformation Program. So it was on recruiting individuals from particular language groups to become educated about mediation as an option to dealing with their traditional conflict approaches, and also to recruit individuals to become community mediators. So the staff had made a connection with the church, which was called San Lorenzo, and they were having this entity come up, the Voices Latinas. So we were asked to do a 10-minute interview in Spanish on mediation. So I had, at that time, an international intern from Spain, Clara, and she went and she did the interview, and it was a success. And then we were asked to come back and do a half an hour the following week in Spanish. So I had Clara and another person, volunteer, who's from Chile, and they did that. And then from that, they also looked to segue into the English speaking, because that's part of their license requirements as part of the radio. It's all Spanish during the day, but at night there's multilingual. So 8 to 9 is English, 9 to 10 is Portuguese, 10 to 11 is Tagalog for the Filipino community, and 11 to 12 is Italian. So then it was asked, can we do a program in English every week? And I was like frantic. I have no experience in radio. I said, what the, mind my words. So I said no. I reflected and I said I could do it once a month as a startup and see. So I have no training in voice or radio experience. So I recruited another volunteer from my pool at the agency that I used to be with, and together we had a contact, and she used to work for CBC Radio.
Mm-hmm.
And so she gave us some guidance on how to organize ourselves. So the first year we did the radio started up February 13th, 2005. And then we went on, and then the following year, in February, we upped it to twice a month. Well, we've built our capacity a little bit. And then my colleague, my co-host, Brian, eventually moved out west, British Columbia, in Canada. with his family in the end of May 2007. And, you think, well, all right, so I'm losing part of my core here. But that's when I decided to go weekly. I said, hey, I had built up enough confidence and capacity with myself to know how, and I created a system on how to organize things. So that's when I went on weekly. And ever since then, it's been a weekly program. And, each week you have to identify a theme or topic. You got to recruit a guest, or sometimes you meet a guest. So I try and tap into the people that I work with or I engage with or I interact with and say, hey, that's something interesting. I'd like to, would you come on the radio and talk about your experience, your service, or whatever you've done to become or get to the point where you're at? And so each week, have to find a way, as you've gotten, I'm sure, in finding to organize things that, I'm already scheduling it to January, right? Each week I create a document called a shell, which is an outline of the hour of the program, breaks it up into timelines, all the actions. It includes any questions that will be used. So, it's a different format than how you prepare your show. I send that to the guests late Friday night of the Sunday they come on. I like to do it live. It's an intention. I like in the moment type of experiences, just like in mediation, being there, connected with that whole situation. So that's how I'm consistent, I guess, in my approach in working, whether it's in radio or mediation or project work. And then, on this, also before the show, I create another document called a script. It's more detailed than the shell. So it's like a part-time job. And it takes a lot of effort to organize and make sure. And it's critical that, when you connect with a potential guest, you want to make sure that that person's going to show up on, we made arrangements a while ago. And, you want to be assured that when you schedule somebody, they're in the schedule and they're going to appear. So that, it was necessary for me to tap in and do certain things today at a certain time. And you had a show. Maybe you have a backup. Sometimes, a guest may not show up, so you got to be prepared with other options. Yeah. So the radio is a great tool. Currently, we record every week, as I said, the audio, though the radio station's got a YouTube channel. So I'm really intentional going to video record as well, the live shows, and then send it over to the radio station YouTube channel to upload there, and then people can tap in. So I'm hoping that that's another way to connect with, the audience, and maybe tap into more people. People can see the stuff that they couldn't actually, see when they're listening to it. They have to visualize more. So, I've been told I look great for radio.
I've had that told to me on so many times,
Yeah. So we're kindred spirits.
Yeah, we're breaking the barrier, though.
Well, you may look a little bit better than me.
No,
we'll leave it at that. We'll leave it at that.
You know what? It's all about promoting mediation and conflict resolution. No matter what we look, putting a voice and a face to the people that do this work and work in this field and want to help people. I mean, that's my goal for this show, and I know that's the goal for yours as well.
Yeah, it's to educate, bring to light information, and access to information and opportunities for people to say, hey, it's one thing to sit back and complain you don't like things in your life. It's another to say, okay, what am I going to do about it? And I'm going to actually do something about it. So that's the purpose also of the show. It's to be a motivation for individuals to say, okay, if that person can do it, well, then maybe I can. So part of the show is to have people communicate their stories about, they struggled initially, they found a way to work through things, and this is what they're doing. So that can be an influence, a positive influence on others to help generate for change in the community. And, we do it as volunteers. It's a passion. It's not something I make, any money on. And so, hey, more opportunity to do that. So finding different creative means to be innovative, to get the message out and communicate. I'm very privileged to have the opportunity to have the radio because, you know, it's cool. A lot of people say, hey, wow, you got a radio program. That's cool. Wow, okay. Yeah, so it's an opportunity.
Absolutely. Well, Gregg, I've taken a lot of your time today, so I have a couple more questions for you before we wrap things up. The first one is one that I ask all of my guests. Now, you briefly mentioned this actually earlier, somebody that you felt that inspired you or had the biggest impact on your career.
Yeah, that was that person who I approached. She taught the grievance arbitration. She had been a lawyer, and then she wasn't quite satisfied with that approach. She became a full-time arbitrator. Her name's Randy Abramsky. I don't know if she's, you know, I know she's still in Toronto and working. So she's the one that said, hey, develop your credentials. You know, it's one that basically that's your resume, the information. So your work experience, your education, and your training. Those are the things when you apply for a position or opportunity that's going to open the eyes of an individual to say, I'm curious to better learn who this person is. And then they'll hopefully invite you in for an interview. And then you can sell them, hopefully, on your other skill sets, your personal stuff. But paper can't show the kind of person you are intrinsically. And so there has to be some other way to resonate and communicate your message about who you are. So building up, and that's what I've been doing, and that's been something I pass on to other individuals. I also coach at York University here too, so I've gone back where I used to be when I took the program in '97. So I coached there in the certificate program in dispute resolution, and then I also supervise in the advanced program that provides students to go to do real live mediations at small claims court. So they get referred on the day of a trial by the justice to say, hey, go try mediation right at the courthouse. And then we sit in amongst the students. There's always two. One's going to do the process and one's going to observe. And we're there to help support, to make sure, because these are real cases. And, you know, you don't want to risk individuals' cases because they filed a claim against somebody. You don't want it to have it affected in a negative way by, quote, the practice of the mediator or the student. So we're there to help support. So those are other options and opportunities, and I'm thankful for Randy for giving me that. So that's the kind of message that I try to convey back to other people.
And, you know, we've already talked about your radio show. We've talked about your mediation clinics that you do every week. But do you have any other, like, upcoming classes, training programs, workshops, speaking engagements, or anything else that you want to mention before we end the show?
No, not per se, other than the range of things. You know, people can go on Facebook, I said, check out Mediation Station either by the group page or and ask to become a member, or the page itself and like it. And it's my intention to create a blog someday because I like the interactive part and have a way to communicate. People can go on Google and just do Gregg Fenten and they'll find my name and certain experiences and say, hey, you know, that's part of who I am, my identity. And, you know, it's my intention to become more organized in doing more things. But, you know, it's easy to say yes, and for me, it's hard to say no. And that can be a real challenge. So prioritizing things all the time. So, yeah, there'll always be something new. And, yeah, I don't know what else to say. But check in Mediation Station. That's where I communicate about other things, too.
Excellent. Well, Gregg, again, thanks so much.
That's about promoting your show, too.
Excellent. Well, yeah, again, thanks so much for coming on the show today. Now, for more information about Gregg, his work, or Mediation Station, as he said, you can check out the Facebook page, the Facebook group that he has set up. If you want to listen to previous episodes of his show, which you can do, I've done that on several occasions myself, you can go to pcrtoronto.org. Now, if you know someone who would benefit from this episode of The Conflict Show, well, please send them a link. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my email list. You can do that for free right now at conflictshow.com. See you next time.